Okay, so picking up where we left off. The Great Depression has struck. Not gotten to the point where 33% of the American people are going to be unemployed, but it is fast getting. There is no money for people to invest, no money for people to go and buy things. Thousands of banks are closing because they are losing. They do not have money to stay in business. Now, Herbert Hoover is the exact opposite of the type of president we would want at a time like that. He believes in rugged individualism. What this is a belief that people can pull themselves up with their bootstraps. That things are tough, but if you work hard and you strive to do better, then you will accomplish more. Right? That is what made him a self-made millionaire. If you ever met a self-made millionaire, you will know that you ask them, how'd you do it? They'll say, the same way, the same way everybody else does. Hard work. If I can do it. So the problem here is that in a normal economy, that's possible. In this economy, at that time, it's not possible. So he's not seeing it as the government's job to take care of people. Nobody sees it as the government's job to take care of people. It is your job to take care of yourself. That's rugged individual. However, he is willing to work with the states to try to provide some form of relief. And to help that, he creates the President's Emergency Relief Organization. And this is going to supervise local relief organizations and agencies designed to help people get back on their feet. Now, it's not going to be as effective as it could be because there is actually no money given to this organization. So they're going to help you without spending money. We're going to provide you with ideas to help survive, but we're not going to actually give you any money to do that. We are going to create the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which is going to provide loans to corporations so that they can stay solvent. If they're staying solvent, therefore they can keep their people employed. If their people are employed, then they're not out of a job. That's the goal. Keep people in their homes. Congress is going to create federal home loan banks, which are going to provide very low-interest loans to homeowners so that they are not kicked out of their houses when they are unable to make payments. And to address the problems of the farmers, Congress is going to establish stabilization corporations. These stabilization corporations are going to set up a farm board. And this farm board is going to buy up excess grain and cotton. However, that's not really the big problem. The big problem is not that we're buying up surpluses or that taking the surpluses off the market. The major problem is that surpluses exist. We need to get to the root of the problem, which is that the farmers need to stop planting as. However, that's not going to come until a little while. These are the goals here. You see what he's doing? He's trying to help people without actually addressing the problem. Now, whether or not he knew the problem, I don't know. But this is a major issue for today. Now, England is having a problem as well. Europe is having a problem. You will remember Germany was given $32 billion of reparations that they had to pay to France and to England and to the United States for causing World War I in the first place. Well, where is Germany getting its money to pay its reparations? Where are they getting it? Getting it from the United States in the form of loans, right? And then so the money comes into the United States, from the United States, it goes to Germany. Germany then pays France, and France is supposed to pay it back to the United States for the loans that we make them during the war so that they could have the war material that they needed. However, they aren't making those payments. So since they're not making those payments, and Germany is borrowing money to pay somebody, they're not generating any money on their own. Since they're not generating any money on their own, they can't pay back the bills for the loans that they have at the state. So basically, instead of giving Germany a loan so that they can pay France, so France can pay off their loan, we're not getting paid on either side of the lending agreement. Money that we lended to our allies or money that we were lending to Germany. Germany is hit the hardest, and their economy just flatlined. In order to try to help Germany and the German people get on at least some stable footing, Hoover gets a one-year moratorium on the reparation from Germany. Gets England and France to agree that they are not going to demand the reparation from Germany for a year. Now, eventually the United States is going to say, Germany, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal for us. England is going to say, no, we're not worried about it. It's not that big a deal for us. France is going to say, give us our money. Because they see it as a necessity, economically, militarily, to keep Germany crushed under the heel of debt. Okay? Because a crushed Germany is not a Germany they think that is going to become a military power. The problem is when war is your only recourse, war is your only recourse. Now, I like this. I like this cartoon here. It says, if you like our hotel, come again and tell your friends. And here's Germany sleeping in this bed. It's got the innkeeper here. And Germany saying it's too hard. The bed is too hard. You've got debt, you've got reparations, you've got indemnity, you've got swords, you've got not a comfortable bed. But, make your bed, you have to find, right? And so, and here is the innkeeper saying, what did you expect, feather bed? And it kind of gives you an idea of how people thought about Germany. Well, Germany started the war, they caused they didn't cause, but they caused the war, they fought the war, and they lost. So therefore, they should pay every price there is for the ramifications of losing. So, heading into 1932, an election year, the Republicans are going to nominate Roosevelt. Are going to renominate Hoover. Because to not renominate Hoover was to admit that the economy was as bad as it really was. They're not going to. They are refused to recognize that it is anywhere near as bad as they think or know it is. That to admit it was to be admitting that they were going to lose the election. So they're not going to do that. The problem is Hoover is going to make some mistakes. During the campaign, he's going to be showing a picture of people out on the street selling apples. He was asked, what do you think of this? And he looked at it and he goes, well, the only reason they're selling apples is because they're too lazy to go and get a real job. Okay? At a time in which 33% of the American people are unemployed, which means they cannot get a job. His method of getting us out of the Great Depression was to work harder, go out there, get a job. That doesn't help. Get another job, and you just get out there and you continue fighting, continue working because the jobs are out there. Were the jobs out there? No, they weren't. He gets renominated. Democrats are going to nominate Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He has been the assistant secretary of the Navy under Wilson, and he had actually run for vice president in 1920 with guy running Cox. Anyway, guy that runs against Harding, James Cox for president. Now, during this time period, the election, things are going to get even worse for the Republicans and actually the American people. The nation is said to be suffering from a bad case of Hooveritis. Hooveritis is the generic term used to deal with any problem. Have you noticed this recently on social media? I can't start my car. Thanks, Obama. I lost my job. Thanks, Obama. The Coke machine ate my money. Thanks, Obama. Everybody's blaming Obama for these things that he doesn't have anything to do with. Okay? Well, maybe historians will say, 20, 30 years from now that the nation was suffering from Obama-itis. I don't know. What I do know is that in the 30s, especially heading into the 32 election, the nation was suffering from Hoover-itis. People would lose their houses and would move into the shod houses that were built of any scrap that you could find. And here's a picture of them right here. And they were called Hoovervilles because they were houses that were created because of Herbert Hoover. It was his depression. Okay? There's Hooverville. Men walked around with their pockets out of their pants like this. Said, hey man, your pockets are out. Yeah, I know. These are Hoover flags. I have nothing in them. I'm broke. I have no money. So I have Hoover flags. And all of this, doesn't portray Herbert Hoover as a candidate for president. Probably the thing that is most detrimental to his chance for re-election occurs in early 1932. And Congress had passed a bill that had given to soldiers fought in World War I $1 a day pay, up to $500 in bonus pay for people who had fought in Europe in World War I. It was supposed to start being paid in 1945. However, the soldiers of World War who had been over in Europe demanded the payment now. 200,000 of them would descend on Washington, demanding the payment now instead of in 1945. This was known as the Bonus Army because they were trying to get their soldier bonus early. The Bonus Army would camp out in the grassy area between the Capitol and the Washington Monument, and it was they were demanding that they get paid early. The House of Representatives agreed and passed a bill to pay them early. The Senate rejected it, and Hoover refused to even consider it because if you give one person a handout, what's going to happen? Somebody else is going to come demanding a handout, and that's just how it is. So he says, no, we're not going to do it. However, eventually what happened is Congress eventually gave or provided a railroad ticket back to the soldiers' homes if they wanted it. Now, a vast percentage of them took it, but others refused to stay there. Eventually, Hoover got tired of seeing all these people there, and he had the United States Army under the command of General Douglas MacArthur remove them from the mall. Well, MacArthur, as you will see when we get a little further, is somebody that is not very interested in following the orders that he has given up until the point that they stop. He has a tendency to exceed the order. He kicks them off the mall, follows them back to their Hooverville in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and proceeds to burn it to the ground, injuring numerous soldiers and their families and killing one infant. This makes the papers. FDR says two things. One, MacArthur is the most dangerous man in America. And second, I've won the election. Now, in the election, FDR is going to promise what is going to be the cornerstone of his administration. It's called the New Deal. What is the New Deal? He doesn't know, but it sounds good. Remember, his cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, had the square deal. Remember, everybody got an equal size. Now we've got a New Deal. The New Deal, we don't know what it is. Eventually we will, but when he's running for office, he doesn't know what it is. But when it comes time to debate and to examine both campaigns, who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for Herbert Hoover, who says, hey, go get a job. Stop sitting here. Go get a job. The reason you're poor is because you don't have a job. Go out there and try to find a job. And you just came in. You just came in from trying to find a job for 8 hours. and you came in and you sat down, the only thing you still have left that is your joy in life, in your house, is your radio. You turn it on hoping to hear some music, and you hear somebody yelling at you that you need to go out and try to find a job because the only reason there's no job out there, the only reason there's not a job is because you are lazy. And then the next guy gets on the radio and says, I've got a deal for America. We're going to help people get back on their feet. We're going to help people get out and find jobs. And it may not be the best jobs, but it's going to be a job. And it's going to be something that is going to be good for the United States. We can get through this. Our brightest days are ahead. Who are you going to vote? Vote for the second guy, right? Why? Because it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. It's a lot better than the other guy who's yelling at you because you're lazy. Now, in addition to promising this new deal, when he was asked, what are you going to do about it? He said, I don't really quite know yet, but I am going to gather brightest and best minds in the nation as a brain trust. We're going to figure out these problems. We're going to figure out these problems. Now, when it comes to time for it, you can see the election here. It's closer, electoral vote, overwhelmingly for it. You can see it's 43 to 57% here popular vote. But FDR's election. Now, what's interesting here is when FDR wins the election in November, he still has till March 4th, 1933, almost 5 months away, 4 months away, before he actually gets to become president. During this time period, Hoover tries to set a trap for FDR. Calls FDR in and says, listen, this is what we've got planned, this is what we're working on to get the economy started, and basically this is what the Republican Congress has signed, and I want you to help me implement it. Now, is FDR president yet? No. If this plan failed, who would be in office that would be responsible for it? FDR. So he says, constitutionally, if I was to take any action, it would not be right. Therefore, I'm going to leave it in your capable hands. Which Hoover gets upset because he realizes, FDR realizes that he had been placed in a trap, but he sprung it instead of captured. As a result, Hoover refuses to do anything. The government is helpless for these 4 months. Refuses to do anything. Hoover refuses to do anything, and the economy is prostrate, completely defunct. Now, the Republicans, as they go out, are going to leave 2 amendments that had just been ratified. They're going to be added to the Constitution. That's the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. The 20th Amendment is also known as the Lame Duck Amendment. The Lame Duck Amendment to the Constitution changes the date at which the president is inaugurated. No longer, after FDR, no longer will the president be inaugurated on March 4th. He will be inaugurated on January 20th. The difference, reason, is because when the Constitution was written, how many paved roads did we have? 0. How many automobiles did we have? 0. How many airplanes do we have? Again, the answer is 0. So when George Washington was inaugurated, they had to count the ballots. Ballots had to go from county courthouses to the state. The state then had to report the numbers to the United States Capitol. The United States Capitol then had to count the numbers, and the numbers then had to be decided whether it's who wins. Then you have to alert the candidate who won, and then the candidate then has a plan to move to the White House, and then they have to be able to move to the White House. Now, what does that have to do with? Well, what season are we talking about? Winter, November through March. What's going to happen if it is cold and rainy and there are no paved roads? Are you going anywhere? No. By putting it in the spring, originally, the Constitution time for all the plans needed to be made and allowed for safe travel. This is going to change it. Why? Because have to look no further than FDR himself. FDR is the first presidential candidate to not be at the Democrat or Republican nominating commission when he gets his party's nomination, but is able to fly to the event to accept the nomination. Once they call him on the phone and say, hey, you're nominated, he gets on a plane, flies to the event before the convention is over, able to give his acceptance. All right? Today, if we elect a president, we could fly him from here over to Washington, D.C., like that, and guess what? Inaugurate him, put him in office today. 20th Amendment. The 21st Amendment is the only amendment added to the Constitution that overturns another amendment. Overturns the 18th Amendment. It abolishes prohibition. The 21st Amendment is the result of the Wickersham Report of 1931. Wickersham Report of 1931 shows that the best way to make people want something is to make it illegal. Okay? True? If you say, hey, you can't have that, you're a kid. You can't have that cookie, the cookie jar. What do you want all of a sudden? You want a cookie? You want that cookie in a cookie jar. And when mom's not looking, you're going to try to get up there and see it. Interestingly enough, who did I tell you was the biggest group responsible for getting the getting prohibition passed? Women were. They were tired of their husbands coming home drunk and passing out, beating them before they passed out, beating them, passing out, and vomiting, and women had to clean them up in bed. So they were saying if there's no alcohol, this won't be a problem. However, 13 years later, they discover that there is something worse than your husband coming home beating you drunk and then passing out on their own vomit. Your husband being home and sober and nagging you all the time. As a result, they're the biggest group that says, let's do away with this prohibition. It didn't work. Now, in addition, what's going to happen if you all of a sudden make it legal to make alcohol? This is a time period when people will probably take any job that they can get. All of a sudden, what are you going to do if you revive the whiskey and beer market in the United States? It's a job, and it's going to be providing stuff. We're going to be buying it. They're going to be buying it legally, and if you're buying it legally, what? You're going to sell more, right? Yes? There more beer consumed than marijuana smoked? I would think so. Okay? All right. Okay? And here's an easy way to jumpstart the economy. Here's a picture of the Clydesdale, the Budweiser Clydesdale, bringing the first shipment of beer, Budweiser, to the White House to deliver to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So, in his inaugural address on March 4th, 1833, FDR said the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. What he's saying is that what is causing the problems in the United States is not anything that is inherently wrong with the United States, is that we fear there is something wrong with the United States. Okay? Do you understand what I'm talking about? On Saturday, I went and took my kids to go get ice cream at Spoons over off of Greens Prairie, College Station. Apparently, they'd been doing some work on the road behind us. They torn a hole in the concrete road, and it was still there, but they put a giant metal steel plate over it. When a car went over it, it made this scary sound, like a ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk. And my 5-year-old Cooper was freaking out. He's like, I'm scared, because that's a scary noise. Okay? And I said, oh, it's just, I explained it to him. He's like, yeah, right. You don't know. It's a scary noise. So he feared something that he thought was scary. Okay, that's what FDR is saying here. We fear something that is scary to us, but we shouldn't be as scary. Okay? On the way home, I rolled down the window, and we drove right over the place, and he started laughing. Why? Because there was nothing to be scared of. That's what FDR is trying to do here. In his first 100 days, FDR accomplishes quite a bit of his party platform. In fact, he is so successful that modern-day presidents are judged in comparison to FDR. You see this all the time. As soon as the president becomes president, it'll say, the first 100 days. Have infographic on the side of news. This is what President Obama did. This is what President Bush did. What happened? On the, not talking about Clinton did, because they don't know. And what happens is they get judged in comparison to what FDR did in that first 100 days. The first thing he does as president is he closes all the banks. He says all the banks are closed. Every single bank across the nation is closed, and there's a reason for that. He says people are taking out more money than they really need. Okay? Remember the video that we watched on Thursday. George is saying, how much do you need? And that first man says, I need $242. He says, no, you don't. How much do you really need? I'll take my $242 now. You need $242 to survive? And then that lady says, how much do you need? I'll take $17.50. That's what she needed to survive. He hoped by closing all the banks down so they could be managed to see if they're healthy, that he would end this panic. If you get the panic to end, well, maybe there's somewhere we can stop. Fewer banks will go out of business. So he goes and he decrees all banking has come to an end. Then he calls Congress into special session and says, Congress, I need you to give me the authority to do to the banks what I just did. Okay? Says, Congress, I just closed all the banks. I don't have the authority to close the banks. I want you to pass a bill that gives me the authority to close the banks so that I can close the banks. And so they did. They passed the Emergency Banking Act, which retroactively gave the president the authority to do what he did. Okay, so all the banks are closed. And then what happens is he's going to do something that is just going to endear himself to the American people. He is going to go on the radio and have what he calls a fireside chat. He's sitting by the fireplace in the White House, and he's just going to talk into a microphone, broadcast from all the radio stations that there are, and say, hey, this is what I did, and this is why I did it. I'm closing the banks down. Banks will be closed until we can make sure that they're healthy. Once they're healthy, they will be reopened. Once they are reopened, we hope your public faith will be restored. Okay? This is the first of a series of fireside chats that he's going to take, but this is first. This is the first because he is communicating directly to the people. The president is communicating directly to the people. If you, and I know you probably haven't, if you listen to NPR, National Public Radio, every Saturday, I think it's about noon, President Obama gives a weekly address. Every president since FDR has done this. He just speaks to the American people about what is going on. This is what's happening. This is what I'm doing. This is what we're looking at. And it's him saying what I'm doing. Now, what? Well, some of them, it depends on the banks. It depends on the bank. First goal is restoring confidence in our banking system. So what it first did, the team was going to send in investigators into the banks to make sure that their assets were able to cover their debts. Okay, that's the problem. If you do not have the money on hand to pay your debts, you're going to have a problem. So this is what happened. It starts off with the Federal Reserve. Remember, we have 12 Federal Reserve banks. Those 12 Federal Reserve banks would be judged to see if they are sufficient. That is the core of our banking system. If those are faulty, nothing else can stand. Right? Right? Yes? Okay. All right. Nothing else can stand. So what happens is those 12 federal banks are judged and found to be healthy. Once they're found to be healthy, they're open. Okay? Now, why don't they do it from the bottom up? Well, this is why. Because the big banks, who do they answer to? Nobody. They answer to the Federal Reserve. But do they call it, is anybody else calling any loans to the Federal Reserve? No. So what happens is once the Federal Reserve is open, the big banks, the big national banks are reopened. Once they're found to be solvent, okay, they're healthy. They're going to be restored. They're going to be opened up. And then what's going to happen is then all the lesser banks are going to be brought back up. Why did we do it from the top down? Because if we open up the, remember the video we watched where George goes in and talks to his uncle and says, what happened? He says, the bank called in a loan. Well, why would a bank call in a loan? A bank would call in a loan if that bank was in trouble. But the Federal Reserve is not going to be in trouble because we know it's not going to be in trouble. We know the big bank's not going to be in trouble because it's been judged to be healthy. So then the smaller banks are going to be able to stay in business and they're not going to have any problem. And within a month of him doing this, we're going to see money starting to come back into our banking system. Over $1 billion is going to be deposited in our bank. But in addition to that, probably more importantly, $600 million in gold is going to be returned to the Treasury. Why is that different than $1 billion, other than monetary, in dollars? When we run out of gold, I've mentioned it several times, that we run out of gold. And this happened in the panic of 1893, happened in the panic of 1907. What happens? We run out of gold because it goes where? Goes overseas. Thank you very much. It goes overseas. Why? Remember, invest in our stock market, buy it with our dollars, but if you sell it, it has to be converted to gold. What happened is this $6 million was sucked out of our economy because foreign investors were not investing in the United States anymore. When it comes back, when it starts coming back, people are going to start showing confidence in that our economy can readjust. Now here's a picture that every single one of you should recognize because you've probably been there. I'm pretty sure that most of you have stood in those stands and been in this vicinity. That's FDR. He's doing a speech. He's speaking to all these people. What do you see in this picture? Okay. Another term for parade is, when we think of parade, we think of people marching, right, or something. But, okay, military, all right. See military. Okay. What do most all of you have in common? Okay, you go here, and what is your goal probably, where is it to go after here? Probably 95% of you, goal is to go A&M. This is Kyle Field. FDR did a speaking tour across the nation. This is later on, but I brought a picture because I like showing pictures. He's speaking at Kyle Field. This is the Corps of Cadets, all A&M students. Talk about this. I think this might be LJ right here. St. John, young representative. So let's talk about the New Deal. It's got three components. It's got 3 R's. 3 R's to the New Deal: relief, recovery, and reform. Relief to the American people. Recovery to the business world. Reform to the business world. We're going to help people survive. We're going to help our economy recover, and we're going to make sure that something like this never happens again by reform. Okay? This will never happen again because we are going to reform. Relief, recovery, reform. First R is relief. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration. I like this quote here. It says, FDR can tell you the alphabet, but only 3 letters at a time. because he was very big on using acronyms. So the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, headed by Harry Hopkins, don't worry about that. This would provide $3.1 billion to, in the form of grants to states for relief. $3.1 billion in the form of grants to the states for relief. A revolutionary new idea is going to be introduced during his administration. And this is the Social Security Act, 1935. What it does is it provides unemployment benefits to people who cannot get jobs. This is revolutionary because never before has it been seen necessary or wise or the government's job to provide any form of direct assistance to people. It's also considered to be temporary. Now, it's not. Or anything else is fine. Things that are temporary have a tendency to always be permanent. This is a popular picture from the time. A photographer would tour the nation, taking pictures, trying to capture the plight of the poor farmers of the United States. And this is, I believe, this picture won the Pulitzer Prize at the time. You can see a poor woman farmer with her two children. Look, you can see on her face the worry lines, just wondering how she's going to survive. We're going to provide relief to agriculture. Credit is going to be extended on a large scale to our farmers, many times providing them the ability to survive and, in some instances, buy the land that they've been working for generations, their family has been working for generations. First is the Federal Credit Administration. The Federal Credit Administration is going to buy up all the other forms or combine all the other forms of federal farm aid that we talked about previously and consolidate them into one. And it would allow farmers to delay foreclosure on their lands, and it would provide low interest rates for them to keep the land they own. So kept them in their farms. Now, the Farm Securities Administration is going to provide very low-cost loans to farmers who had never owned the land that they had worked. Remember how we talked about after the Civil War ended during Reconstruction, we're going to have this time period in which tenant farmers are going to come about. Tenant farmers are going to work the land, somebody else's land, and then at the end of the day is going to get, going to pay maybe like a third of the amount of their crops. So it would allow them to buy their own land, be more than subsistence farmers. With the creation of the Federal Surplus Commodities Corporation, we would continue to buy up surpluses. Continue to buy up surplus that farmers were creating. It's not until the passage of the Agricultural Adjustment Act that we would address the root of the problem, that of reducing the amount of crops. The Agricultural Adjustment Act created the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, and this would set about getting farmers to cut down on the amount of crops that they were making, or that they were growing. Originally, what they would do is they would dictate that instead of using 2 acres of land, a farmer could only use 1 acre of land, thinking that would cut their cut the amount of crops that they did down, right? Does that make sense? Yes? Does that make sense? But what would happen is farmers would say, okay, well, the space between my rows was 3 feet. If I can only plant 1 acre, I'm going to make space between my crops 18 inches. So I can plant the same amount of crops, half the land. Get a little bit further, and you'll see what eventually is going to be. What drastic step we're going to have to take. Destroy them. We get a little bit further, they get a little drastic. Here they're buying them. So they're buying them and destroying them. What we're going to do later on is go over this and destroy them. So, an organization, another 3-letter relief organization is going to be created in the form of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Reconstruction Finance Corporation is going to oversee government programs that are designed to put people to work. Now, I have a very good friend that lost his job this past summer, and it was very difficult for him to find another job. He had a very narrow niche of a skill set. For him to find another job along that area was very difficult. He and I would talk a lot, and I've been trying to find a job. He's got a job now, but it's not the best job. He lost his job in May. He did not get another job until December. First paycheck was on December 23rd. He was so excited he was going to be able to provide Christmas for his kids. And, I told him that I was excited for him. And I said, the way things are going right now, that's great. I'm glad. He said, hey, man, a job is a job. Okay? A job, any job is a good job. Is that true? Any legal job is a good job. Okay? Any job is a good job. All right? If I was to lose my job and I actually had to go do real work, oh my gosh, it's terrible. This isn't real work. I mean, I got to tell you stories. If you guys like it, or may not like it, you have to listen to it. But if I had to go get a real job, provide for my family, I would. And it may not, I could be a garbage man, but it would be a job. And a job is a job is a job. Okay? When there's 33% unemployment, any job is a job. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation would create the Civilian Conservation Corps. And this put 250,000 men to work in our national forest being paid $1 a day. $1 a day. Now, wait a minute, that's absurd. No, that's good money. That's good money. And they would, do anything that was needed. They might build bridges. They might clear out old growth. How many of you guys have ever gone camping out at Huntsville State Park? Anybody gone Huntsville State Park? Cody did, because I took Cody camping there one year. And it's a really cool park. It's really small outside of Huntsville. And they have all these trails that have been cut. And these trails were cut by this Civilian Conservation, Triple C. And the Triple C is, they just do whatever is needed. They cleaned up the lake. They cleaned up the campgrounds. They just made the national forest nicer. And on one of the trails that you go on, you can go by one of their logging huts. I don't think it's been kept up very well, but you can still see where it was. Next is the Works Progress Administration, WPA. It's going to build public utilities and public buildings. How many guys are from a small town? From a small town, okay. In your small town, did your school, or was there a public building that wasn't made of brick, but it looked like it had just been, rocks had been put up on the side of it, ordered together, and put up on all around it to provide the facade of the building, the outer shell of the building? Do you have anything like that? In Brittle, my hometown, we had, at the high school, we had what was known as the rubber gym. Rubber gym, instead of having a wooden floor, had a rubber floor. And it had that facade on it. At Glen Brittle, There's a couple of buildings that are made of that same material. They were all Works Progress Administration buildings. That was the cheap building material that they had available. As a result, buildings from that time looked like that. When I was a student at Sam Houston State University and I was a TA, my office was in the Estill building, right on the hill up on the quad. In order for me to go, eat lunch, and I go over to the Wendy's across the street, I had to go down this sidewalk. And as I went down the sidewalk, every 10th square had a stamp in it that said, "Built by Works Progress Administration." It was things that probably didn't necessarily need doing, but they got done because people needed jobs. And so that's what they did. They created jobs on things that needed to be done. The National Youth Administration was created for people like you, college students who needed to make some extra money. This provided part-time work for youth that were in late high school years or in college. Now, in order to recover the nation's economy, to start getting us hopefully back on track, we would provide to businesses substantial amounts of credit so that they can continue to employ their people. Employ your people, they're getting paid. If they're getting paid, they're going to pay for their home. They're going to pay for food. They're going to pay for electricity. They're going to pay for water. They're going to pay for clothes. All of these other things that they're paying for is generating jobs. If you don't have that money, you're not paying for those things. If you're not paying for those things, you're not generating money. You're not generating jobs. You're not jump-starting the economy. Our currency is going to be taken off of the gold standard. And when we take it off the gold standard, we're going to be able to change how much a dollar is worth. We're going to drop it down to 59% of what it was originally. By doing this, we are going to make our goods cheaper. By making our manufactured goods cheaper, it is easier for people to buy them. If it is easier for you to buy things, you're going to buy them easier, quicker, right? I'm trying to talk myself into buying something, but it's too expensive. I don't know if I want to spend that amount of money on that item. But if it went to half price, I'd be like, oh, okay, no problem. Go ahead and buy it. In 1934, Congress, instead of trying to pass another tariff that could have repercussions that nobody is aware of, Congress is going to give the president to enter into agreements with other nations, saying this is what giving the president the power to negotiate with other nations reciprocal trade agreements. It's called the Reciprocal Trade Agreement Act of 1954. What happens is the president can say, hey, England, you want us to buy steel. We don't like paying an import tax on our steel to you. Okay? You want us to buy, I don't know, let's say your cotton. Okay, why would we buy cotton from anybody else? I don't know, but I can't come up with it. You want us to buy your cotton. And you don't want us to pay taxes. I mean, you don't want to pay taxes on those goods, right? Like, that's right. So this is what's going to happen. You let our steel come in and don't tax it. And we'll let your cotton come in and we won't tax it. It's reciprocal. It's a reciprocal trade agreement. And it gives the power to the president to make deals and not something that Congress is just going to arbitrarily say, boom, makes sense. So this is what's going to work. And as we've seen with a lot of times with our tariffs, they don't end up the way we expected them. We're also going to provide assistance to the railroads in the form of the Emergency Railroad Transportation Act. The problem is that the railroads have once again extended too far. And since they had extended too far, nobody was using some of their lines and they were heavily in debt. Because they were heavily in debt, they could not reinvest in their infrastructure. They could not reinvest in the latest technological improvements, and people weren't using were not using them. So Congress is going to give them economic assistance. And by giving them economic assistance, the railroads are going to be able to reinvest in themselves and update their equipment. In fact, because they updated their equipment so much, a very expensive technology is going to come down to be very inexpensive. And this is something that you guys take for granted. In fact, you're probably taking it for granted right now. You hear it right now. The air conditioning. The air conditioning is going to be put into railroad cars. Because they're going to be put into railroad cars, they're going to provide air conditioning. Now, let's say it's August. Say you have the opportunity to go from here to Houston. You could go buy a car that doesn't have air conditioning. If you have a car, you probably don't. You sold it. Ride a horse in August. Or you could take a train. And the train has this new high-fangled air conditioning. Let's go. Get in that train. And then you're like, I wonder how much it's cost. Well, guess what? It's a fraction of what it was a couple years ago because all the railroads are used. They're going to see railroads come in and being used. And, railroads are going to start embracing the technology of air conditioning, and it's going to be used by many other people, and it's going to spread to the home. We're also going to look at reforming the business world. Try to prevent what happened when the stock market crashed from ever happening again. And the first thing we're going to do is protect people's citizens' deposits. And we're going to do that through the passage of the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933. The Glass-Steagall Act is going to create the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This insures your deposits. I think it's up to $400,000. Up to $400,000 per bank. Most people, that's awesome. For me, it's terrible because I have to spread my deposits out to 10 to 20 banks because they don't let me max. Nobody's buying. Okay. Yeah, right, Froggy. You don't make that much at the college. So what happens is if you max out, your it's about $400,000, and that's the most you deposit in that. But if that bank was to fold, the federal government under the FDIC would give you that money back. Insure. Would not lose it like you did during the Great Depression. Banks. Now remember way back, the beginning of lecture 2, we talked about the nation's economic system. I said that the Act 1863 said that you could become a national bank, but you could choose to stay a state bank. If you chose to stay a state bank, you only had to pay a 10% premium. Okay, remember that? Yes. All the heads nodding. Under the Glass-Steagall Act, that is no longer an option. If you are going to be a bank in the United States, you will be subject to national regulatory rules. Can't be a state bank anymore. Not allowed. You will be a national bank regardless. Okay? Next is the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934, which establishes the Securities and Exchange Commission. The Securities and Exchange Commission is going to provide the Security and Exchange. The Securities and Exchange Commission is going to investigate the stock market purchases, sales, and to make sure that nothing fraudulent is occurring, and making sure that there's no insider trading going on. What's insider trading? If I work for a defense industry, I'd say I work for Boeing, okay, and I am in the know, and I find out through an inter-office memo that comes to me that is not supposed to come to me, and that it accidentally fell into my lap, that says Boeing has just negotiated a deal with the United States to provide $3 trillion worth of jets over the next 5 years. Okay? You know what's going to happen once that news goes public? People are going to buy Boeing like crazy. So what I do is I go, and I'm not supposed to know this, I go in and I buy 3,000 shares of Boeing at $20 a share. And then that news goes public. What happens? People buy into it, and now it's trading at $200 a share. Okay? I'm making some money, but I did it with insider information. That's illegal. Who's ever heard of Martha Stewart? Martha Stewart spent 6 months in jail because of insider trading. Somebody told her that this thing called eBay was going to be big. And so she bought eBay. And it went through the roof. She went to jail because she was proof that she had insider information that she should not have had. But on the bright side, I'm sure her cell was pretty as cell in the jail block. We would create the Federal Power Commission to reform our utilities. Now, utilities at this time period were kind of a hodgepodge of organizations. Some counties would create their own utilities, their own power, their own water supply companies. Some cities would do it. Sometimes what you had was you would have corporations that would go in. They would go in and they would try to make profit off it. They build a hydroelectric dam and they charge you for it. The problem is that there was no standard of what is a good price to pay. So what we would do, or the United States would do through the Federal Power Commission, is we would set about trying to regulate what was a fair price for utilities. So how would you do that? If you were trying to figure out what a fair price was for something, there's something you want to go. How many guys go into a store with your phone and you see something that you want and you scan it or you look it up online to see if it's cheaper? Yeah, I'll do that all the time. I go into Barnes and Noble. I go to Barnes and Noble and I love browsing. Woo, look at all this stuff. Well, I like that book. Scan it. $32 at Barnes and Noble. Amazon used, 20 cents. Okay? So I'm going to buy it used, right? Okay, well, how do you know? Is it 20 cents or is it $32? Which one is it? Okay? You go to different places. The problem is there's no real way of knowing. See how much it costs per kilowatt hour. Is it 2 cents? Is it 32? $32. What is it? As a result, we created the Tennessee Valley Authority, Tennessee River Valley Authority. And what this did is it created a series of hydroelectric dams at the Tennessee River. And what this did was they were hydroelectric so that the water generated the electricity. We were then able to see how much it actually cost to generate per kilowatt hour. Because of that, we knew what a fair price was. It's kind of like a yardstick. What does a yardstick measure? A yard. Okay, not that difficult. It measures the yard. Okay? It measures the yard because it is a yard 3 feet. That's how much it measures. Correct? Yes. Okay? So we're going to say this is the yardstick that we're going to measure. You're going to charge a kilowatt hour. It has to be between this range. This is how much it really costs. Now, the Rural Electrification Administration is going to provide rural areas electricity. It's the name. Because utilities were either county or were public or corporation owned, there was really no incentive to send electricity out to some of these farms out in the middle of nowhere. They might use $2 worth of electricity a year. It's not worth spending $200, $300 to send lines out there to get $2 back, correct? Okay. As a result, a lot of places did not have electricity in rural areas. This is all going to be changed with the Rural Electrification Administration because we are now going to send electricity out to those areas. Because if you have electricity, well, then maybe you can buy electrical devices. You might be able to buy one of those high-fangled toaster ovens. that you've never used in your life, but you know your grandma has one. You're like, Grandma, why do you have that? What is it? Toaster. What does it do? It toasts, but it's an oven. Okay, it's like a precursor to a microwave, except you can't make popcorn in it. To reform the business world, we would create the NRA. The NRA, led by Hugh Johnson, would work with all elements of the industry to establish these codes. These codes, once they were in place, had the force of law. If you violated them, this is going to be important later, if you violated them, you could be prosecuted. One of the major things that it did is it finally abolished child labor in textiles. Okay, it's textile mills. No more kids falling asleep and sewing their hands into a garment. What it did is it went and they would come together and form these codes about what was acceptable and what was not, and these codes would then be enacted. If you existed under the codes and operated under the codes, and the NRA thought that you were, you would be awarded this decal to put in your shop window, on your product, or in your mill. And it encouraged people to buy the Blue Eagle. When I was growing up, there was a similar marketing campaign called "Look for the Union Label." You know, it's what you look for. You guys are familiar with the Buy American, right? You want to buy American because it generates American jobs. How many guys own a Ford truck or Ford vehicle? I got a Ford Explorer. Okay? Where was your Ford built? Mexico. Okay? Where was the Toyota Tundra? Okay? Where's your Toyota Tundra go? San Antonio. In the old days, it actually matters. Today, globalization doesn't really matter. Yeah. So, this brings us to one of the worst time periods for farmers in the United States. It's called the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl is going to occur between 1928 and 1936, with the worst one coming in 1930. What happens is, this is a story I've been telling you since the beginning of the semester. With the Homestead Act of 1864 providing free land to settlers who all they had to do was go and live there, they would be able to make improvements on the land for 7 years, and then it became theirs. When they went, they discovered that there was no wood, and they had to build their houses out of grass, hence the sod house. The grass that they did find in some areas was up to your waist. When they tilled it up to plant it, they discovered that the roots went down 18 to 24 inches, which meant 18 to 24 inches of topsoil that was being held in place by these roots. Okay? When the farmers moved there, it was a wet season. There would be some high points, there would be some low points. Then World War I comes along, and wheat is going for $2.50 a bushel, guaranteed by the United States government. We would see the birth of a new type of farmer called the suitcase farmer. People would buy land, and my wife's family's from the area in the Panhandle of Texas where this would occur. And they lived in this place called Dalhart. And what would occur is people would come to the area, and my wife's grandmother remembers this, people would come into the area, and they were called suitcase farmers. Come into the area, they buy a lot of land, they till it, they cast their seed on it, they would sow their wheat seed on it, and then they'd leave. They'd come back when it was harvest time and harvest it. Take it, put it, send it to market, make money, come back, do the exact same thing at the beginning of planting season. Okay? But here's what happened. World War I comes to an end. When World War I comes to an end, the price of cotton goes through the floor. When it goes through the floor, what occurs? These suitcase farmers aren't doing that anymore. So the ground is tilled, but there is nothing holding it down. And I've told you when I was in New Mexico, the first time I went out to Fort Union, I had to go through it backwards. because the wind was so great on my chest that I could not breathe. I could do it backwards, but I could not do it walking forward. As a result, that wind coming down from Rocky Mountains is going to sweep across the plains. And in many areas, the grass keeps it down. But what happens when it hits these huge patches of dirt that has been left tilled, but nothing grows in it? It's going to be gathered up, and it's going to be shipped wherever the wind blows. This is known as these storms that would be generated by these vast winds were known as black dusters. Black dusters would come through and they would sweep across the plains and they would just pick up dust and shovel out east as far as they would go. The biggest one occurred in April 1934. More dirt was picked up in this 10,000 foot high cloud, 100-mile wide cloud, was dumped in the 1,000 foot high cloud, 100-mile wide cloud of dirt, dumped more of this dirt into the Atlantic Ocean, that's where it ends up, than was dug out of the Panama Canal. Okay? And once that dirt is gone, it is never coming back. Now, it's hard to describe this without seeing a video of it. All the videos we have of it, of that type of storm, are from that era. But on November 11th, 2011, a sandstorm is going to go through Lubbock, the same area that this occurred. And this is all going to happen in 3 minutes. This is this is taking place on the 3rd floor. Hello, did it all just crash in? I think it did. Oh, I got two. This is the 3rd floor of a building at Texas Tech. As I said, my wife's grandparents lived through this era. There are stories of men no longer shaking hands because during this storm, the static electricity was so bad that if they shook hands, they would knock each other out by the static discharge. Cars would trail chains behind them to ground them. One reporter, as he was driving through a dust storm, once he got out of it, would go and look on the other side of his car where the storm hit it to find the car scraped clean of all paint. My wife's grandmother tells a story of she would frequently wake up from a nap. She woke up from a nap. She would look back, and everything except where her head was on her bed was dirt. That was dirty, and then where her head was white.
Dirt.
This is Texas Tech. They're not the most brothers.
There goes the sun.
Yep. Amanda, I'm sure we can go through some of your videos. You can take them with your iPhone and probably find you get a commentary. So.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes the dirt now.
Yeah. And the thing is, people are going to be driving through this. The best thing that you can do if you ever caught in a duster like this is to stop your car. Because it's going to suck up all that dirt. Yeah, I'm saying.
Holy cow. Can't see anything up there.
There's cars still driving in it. We're out of time, but you can look the rest of this up on YouTube. And this is a short one. It's 3 minutes. But the other ones are like 11 to 20 minutes in length.